Next up, the capabilities. So we started looking at some of the strategic considerations, but let's think about capabilities, building the right capabilities. And I'm identifying three areas to look at. Capabilities in terms of our people and the skills they have. Technology platform choices, which I postponed from earlier. If you remember, I said that was going to be covered. And security and privacy as a capability. Okay. For me, front and center are people. It's the important part of any, the most important part of any organization, the people. So we're thinking about the awareness that people have, AI awareness, digital literacy. It's not that I'm wanting all of my colleagues to be Python developers next week, but an awareness of trends, an awareness of what's going on. I'd like to see leaders in organizations referring to AI and some of the impact that AI can have, some of the enabling elements of AI, not in a sort of confused sort of spray of jargon, but in a realistic context aligned with what your business does. So having an awareness of AI and a level of digital literacy, being comfortable with the idea of data, comfortable with your role, because that's what it's going to be assisting with. Think of the upskilling that's needed. That's a huge opportunity. I don't say that simply because I work for a training organization. It's a huge opportunity personally, individually. Upskilling is a good thing, not to be feared. But the upskilling of the workforce, looking at gaps in knowledge, gaps in skill set, writing prompts, for example, coming up with some good prompt engineering would be a useful skill to acquire. Having a mindset around change, not a sort of static, traditional, overly conservative mindset of distrust of progress, but having a mindset aligned with change. Now, that's easy to say. That's very easy just to throw that out. And when I think of my mum. Okay, is my mum going to adopt an enthusiastic, change-aligned approach to AI technology? I'm going to say no. Okay, so there has to be some kind of message in that as well, and we see there the importance of communication, of reaching out, of being inclusive, of trying to address fear. Fear of job loss would be maybe the primary fear that many people would have, a distrust of AI generally. But increasing awareness, increasing digital literacy can start to help there. But there's got to be a human feel to that kind of communication as well. So the upscaling, ethical and responsible competencies. So I think an important part here is to say when AI is not the option, AI is not going to be used for this. I hope that my GP doesn't use AI to prescribe medication if ever I need it. I'm hoping that there's a human doing that. Now, is that hope? Is it right for me to say that? Well, I don't care. It's how I feel about it. And we have the ability to say, this is where we can use AI, this is where we are not going to use AI. We're making a informed decision about this, conscious decision about this. We're also thinking in terms of ethical and responsible competencies about our responsibility in terms of data privacy and confidentiality, and not abdicating responsibility to a tool, to a machine for that. So training within an organization around data privacy, confidentiality rules, it has been relevant for a long time, but maybe is even more relevant with AI tools. Think about leadership, being able to craft some kind of tangible vision, some inspiring vision, and see and align AI with that vision. So see how AI can help us deliver on that. Conscious of risks, conscious of encouraging experimentation, uh, and a good culture around it. Communication. I've got change management and communication here. Maybe going without saying that as a people, thinking of people and skills that we have to be accomplished at change management. It's everything really around this involves some kind of change, whether relatively minor or significant change. And I felt it also important to make a point of psychological safety and culture. And thinking about failure as learning. And that actually is not just that's not a specifically we're going to be using AI, so think of failure as learning. That's a life skill as well. So a safety culture in an organization often includes this idea that failure is not it's not to be punished. It's when we fail, we can learn from that. We can be better next time. So we're not. It's not about being the expert. It's about being the person who's continually learning. That's the more useful mindset that we have with AI, and I would say with any kind of job, whatever you're doing. This one falls over. Sorry about the sound effects there. Um, Cross-functional collaboration. It's not just in the sort of the backyard of AI, but we're thinking of IT, I should say, but there's multiple functions involved to make this happen, from IT to data teams to business teams to sales teams to leadership to HR to risk to legal. Lots of functions collaborating to make this work. And of course, with people possibly aligned with psychological safety, well-being, and the human impact. How AI affects workloads? Does it reduce the cognitive demand on the person, or does it increase the cognitive demand? How do we prepare for that? Where's job satisfaction in this? Are we putting that first? Are we putting the well-being of the technology first? And overall, just a perception of fairness of how AI is being used. Is it helping us? Is it um, motivating us, making us feel good about where we're working? The technology side of it, and that this is what I work in. This is what I teach. This is functionally what I'm very interested in. But I don't think it's ever going to be as important as people. But it is a major factor in terms of getting ready, looking at our capability. So thinking about cloud versus hybrid versus on-premises, and just going through these, looking at cloud options from Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, etc. We get scalability, huge scalability, paying for what we use, paying for what we need when we need it, ramping up resources and scaling them back down as we need to, always accessing the latest tools that they have available. So always using version now of everything that we touch. And that's great. A lower upfront cost in that as well. It's likely, in addition, to be easier to integrate with the modern tool set that we probably work with already, and the engagement that we have with those cloud solutions, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, storage as a service type solutions. With an on-premises environment, we have, in some ways, the opposite. Well, that makes the positive sound negative. So it's not quite as simple as that. We have more control. You have really infinite control. You've got more control over your data, where it sits, where it resides, the sovereignty of your data. You've got the ability to customize as far as possible, as much as you need to. It might even be a requirement for some sensitive workloads that it is on premises. But it could be it will be more expensive to start with. It will free you up from any over reliance on vendors, and yeah, it is we have to look at the pros and cons of that. So probably some kind of hybrid approach might be appropriate. So a mix of flexibility and scale and available resources, along with the control that we might want to exercise. So more of a hybrid approach, and that might be a common option to go for. Data architectures. So I was talking earlier about data and where we get it and the reliability of it, the consistency of it, the completeness of it. But what about the actual data architecture? Where is it going to reside in our new AI environment? So we've got data lake, data warehouses, a world of disparate systems around our environment. Again, we're thinking of data quality and consistency, pipelines to integrate our data, the engineering of our data to make it accurate, to get that single source of truth. But not just the data that we're using to consume through solutions, but the data that we're using around our solutions for the metadata, the governance level of data. We're thinking of how we accommodate real-time data, how we accommodate batch data requirements. So there's a lot of questions around data architecture and getting that, certainly getting that up to speed, getting that right, but being realistic about what we can expect to be using. The models that we work with. So when you're thinking about AI models, are you thinking of building a model? Are you using OpenAI, Azure OpenAI? There's a choice. OpenAI is not the same as Azure OpenAI. So what do we need in terms of flexibility? Google Vertex, Amazon Bedrock. Where are we starting this? You might also need to think about industry specific models. You know, if you're working in healthcare or legal environment, what sort of industry specific models do we work with? Or is it going to be very open source? Llama, Mistral, a world of other open source models. Think of specialist platforms for models, whether it's chatbots or tools like Vision, robotic process automation, RPA, we'll see. So there's specific requirements there for the models that we work with. And if I think of Azure Foundry, so Microsoft Azure Foundry, there's a really useful tool where you can see different models and you can compare their strengths and weaknesses. But there has to be something like that. We're not going to say, this is the model everyone else is using, we're going to use that. Think about yourself in this, think about your organization. What suits you best in this? That's your strategic factor that you're thinking about. What have we got in terms of existing systems that we're trying to integrate with? Just casually browsing, seeing the clock there. So skip along through this. So think about existing systems and CRM, ERP systems, HR systems, workflows that we have to align, and the scalability that we're trying to get out of this to ramp it up. And B, the way I had this bullet point initially was beware of vendor lock-in. And then I thought that might be a bit negative. But vendor lock-in is a consideration. To what extent are we willing to be aligned with a vendor? Is it something that we're going in wholesale with? So I'm a huge fan of the Azure data platform. And I hope that's not a controversial thing to say. I'm a huge fan of the products within the Azure data platform, and also the Azure AI environment as well, whether it's through Foundry or some of the other tools. But would I be willing to be locked into that? And would I be willing to bring my organization into that? Well, that requires a bit more consideration. Whatever else we think about with technology platform choices, robust governance and monitoring has to be up there, especially if we're thinking about a vendor supplying this, especially if we're using services. We're paying good money for these services, these cloud services. Make sure we're getting what we pay for. So while many jobs might be easier, some jobs might be replaced, monitoring is probably busier than ever, ensuring that we're getting what we pay for. So some technology choices, security and privacy. Some of this has been mentioned already, so maybe it's a bit of recap, but we're thinking of data confidentiality and data protection ideas and regulations. So what data do we send to AI? Is any of that personal? Is it confidential? Should it be regulated? Should it be anonymized, or have parts of it redacted or obfuscated? Think of the data sovereignty. Where is your data residing? And there'll be national requirements there, maybe government requirements. ISO 27001 is sort of, in some ways, maybe the best known ISO standard around this, 27001. We've got locally the Australian Privacy Act, the European Union legislation around AI. So yeah, take those into account. The security, identity and access, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, role-based access controls, zero trust, the sort of good, solid security principles around it. Like any tool, really, but especially relevant for us here, preventing data leakage, so thinking about how that might happen, what sort of data may be leaked, customer personal data, employee data, but even confidential business information, intellectual property, so thinking about the value of that. Looking at just overall the vendor security posture, if we think of it as a sort of way of being, security posture. So what that looks like, and does that align with our security posture? There's laws around compliance, and it's on us really to be monitoring and looking at incidents. So another security idea is prevention, detection, correction, and in the sort of monitoring and incident response, we're thinking of, initially, we're very definitely thinking about prevention. We will not lose data, but if it happens, we want to detect it as soon as possible, and we want to correct it as soon as possible. So again, monitoring is busy. Incident response is important. And I mentioned governance, policy frameworks that we should think about, and have your staff do awareness of this as well. This is really important. It's something good organizations should be doing.